All right, everyone, welcome back. You are 3/4 through with this class. We will be doing a week on the 20s, a week on the 30s, a week on the 40s. 50s is just 1 day, 60s is 3 days. Probably be able to, kind of limit that a little bit, but just want to say congratulations on everybody with doing the work. We're going to be talking about the 20s. Today is pretty fun, and then the next class is also pretty fun on the 20s. All right, so this is the thesis, and F. Scott Fitzgerald was the author of The Great Gatsby. His wife, Zelda Fitzgerald, you'll see her in the readings, and she was kind of the prototype for the flapper, so you probably recognize that word. Anyways, according to F. Scott Fitzgerald, the 1920s was the jazz age, a period of fast-paced creativity, cultural improvisation, breakaways from convention, and unabashed sexuality. So we'll be talking about all of that. And this is our outline. So we will start off with a little bit of review, going back to the cult of domesticity. And then after women got the vote, how they got the vote, we'll go to the new woman who, we'll just do that briefly, what the fears were of this woman that has the vote now, who became the flapper. We'll do something very short on the automobile. Prohibition, of course, is fighting against alcohol, doing activity with that. No alcohol, but we'll be doing an activity. And then corruption, we'll be talking about the mobs during this time. Next video will be about the Harlem Renaissance, about movie stars and fads, and lots of fun stuff too. Okay, so if you guys remember going back to the cult of domesticity, we talked about how two women, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, went across the ocean to London and went to the Anti-Slavery Congress to help fight slavery. Because again, this is 1848 or 1840s, 1840 actually, and slavery is still going on. So when they got to this Congress, they weren't allowed to sit or speak, if you remember. So they came back home and focused on women's rights. And at the Seneca Falls Convention, they did the Declaration of Sentiments. And if you guys remember, it was based on the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and that all men, and then they added women are created equal. And then remember, we talked about with the Declaration of Independence, the tyrant was the king, but with the Declaration of Sentiments, the tyrant is the man. So as we said, this didn't really work, right? Women didn't get the vote till 1920, so 72 years later, if you argue something, it's not very effective. People didn't necessarily think that women were inferior, but they thought they were different. Remember, we talked about that. So now we're going to take a look at how we actually did get the vote, and we're going to look at Jane Addams and NASA argument. Okay, so take a look at Jane Addams, and I'm going to be asking you a question about comparing these guys, Elizabeth Cady with the Declaration of Sentiments, and then Jane Addams or the NASA argument. Okay, so pay special attention. This is not in your readings. Okay, so what is this arguing? We've got all of these problems, and it's the women who are the ones that take care of everything, right? And then here's the NASA argument, National American Women's Suffrage Association. And what are they saying about women? That they're the most religious, most moral, most sober. This absolutely goes back straight back to the cult of domesticity. So it's a racist argument, though. Why are we giving the vote to the ignorant foreigner, right? It was a racist argument, but they did say, hey, we're the most religious, the most moral, the most sober. This is, again, straight from the cult of domesticity, that white middle-class women are naturally good, and that they need to get that vote. So is this based on women are different or women are the same? Take a look at the first one. Take a look at this one. Yeah, that women are different from men, and that's why they should get the vote. Well, look at these dates again. 1906, 1912. I mean, is that effective? Yes. 1920, we do get the vote. So this is how we got the vote. And if you take a look at some of this other kind of propaganda, votes for women, and what is this woman in the shape of? A cross, and she's an angel, right? Or what are these women wearing? Which a lot of women in Congress, when they're trying to make a point, they still wear white, which I think is pretty interesting, because white stands for purity, right? Again, women's differences or women's similarities, women's differences. They should have the vote because they're more pure. And then here, New York State denies the vote to criminals, lunatics, idiots, and women. All right, so hey, I'm the mother of your children, and yet you're treating me like a criminal, lunatic, or idiot, right? Meaning, idiot meaning mentally challenged. So again, based on women's differences, not their similarity to men. Okay, so question number one is I want you to compare the argument from the Declaration of Sentiments with the argument from either Jane Addams or NASA. I need a short quote from each and then your analysis. That's question one. All right, so we will go on now to women's vote. So we do get the vote in 1920. And this goes into the new woman. This is what the big fear was. So what's happening here? Well, you can see the men are at home taking care of the kids and the women are leaving. So there's this big fear that now the genders have reversed. And here's some women acting out on that. They've got the men's, suits on and, smoking, and they've got the hats and all this. Of course, flappers are going to smoke quite a bit, but this is definitely women, dressing as men. And again, that was a big fear called the new woman who now has the vote. Okay, well, the new woman evolves into the flapper. And you can see in 1615, the woman, look what she's reading, the Bible. Her posture is perfect. And then look at 1915, what's happened. So she's reading a fashion magazine, she's smoking, she's drinking, her posture is, pretty bad. So, women have gone downhill, supposedly, or they're changed, they've evolved, right? Okay, I'm not saying they downhill, but you know what I mean. Okay, and then here's another cartoon called The Weaker Sex. Well, I don't know why women are called the weaker sex. They're the only ones that can withstand the pain of childbirth, but they have been called the weaker sex. And here's this man who now is the weaker sex because, well, you can see he can't decide between the two women. Okay, here is a great picture of flappers, and I want you to think of some of the adjectives you'd use. Again, I wish we were in the class because I get some great adjectives, but adventurous and carefree and kind of wild, and that definitely is the flapper. Okay, so now with the flapper, and I'm going to ask you to do an assignment with the first 3 primary sources in just a minute, but take a look just as a little bit of background. So now we've got the flapper, and they are selling makeup, right? Well, in the Victorian era, only prostitutes wore makeup. So now everybody's wearing makeup, and look what they're advertising, that it's kiss-proof. So it's assuming that this woman is going to be kissing. I used to use a lot of documents on birth control during this time, but then people got very confused. What I need you to know is that it's not like today where the third date, everybody just sleeps together, right? It's not at all like that. You might end up sleeping with somebody that you're going to marry. They are kissing quite a bit, and it's called petting, where they do everything up to the point of intercourse, but they are not just having sex with everybody. So just be clear on that. Birth control, you guys, is not legal for married women, and I said married, until the 1960s, and unmarried women till the 1970s. So if you want to get birth control, it's completely illegal. It's something that you would do if you're, pretty wild or, whatever. It just is not what everybody's doing. People assume everybody's doing it all the time, and that's not at all true. But they are petting or kissing. Okay, so here is another advertisement, just kind of a sexual advertisement, right, with the hosiery. So they're showing their legs. And normally in class I would bring a flapper outfit, which is completely different than a Victorian outfit, right? The bust is kind of minimized. The one I use has a lot of fringe on it, meant for dancing. The arms are showing, the legs are showing. That's the big change. Okay, here's a picture of them with a bathing suit contest, probably down like at Coney Island or something. Here they are, in college, and they've chosen this young man as the most charming, gentleman. So, they're not being demure. You guys remember when we talked about the fan language? So please compare that. These women are, all over this guy, right? Here they are doing the Charleston. And here these women are being arrested for indecent exposure. Okay, so just to go on a little bit about the 20s. You can't really see the text here, which is too bad, but there were a couple of cartoons that were really big, and usually we go through them. We do a few activities, and I have you do an activity. So Merely Margie and then Joe Prep were also, if you want to look online about those. What's going on in this is that all of these guys want to date Margie, and she's busy, right? So they decide they're going to pretend like they don't care and not be with her, but they really, really miss her. And then when she sees them, she says, hey, I've been at a house party for the last week, and then they get really mad at the guy that suggested they don't even try to get a hold of her. So the other one that I use is Joe Prep, and Joe Prep hawks his saxophone in order to take this girl to a dance, and then she ends up dancing with everybody but him. So just get kind of those images that the girls are, filling up their dance cards. There's little cards that they would fill up, saying who's going to dance with them, and that they were sort of in charge here. Okay, a couple more things you should know is with dating, it's no longer with chaperones. You know, and I ask usually where are they dating? Well, you know, dances and speakeasies. We'll talk about that. Those are illegal places for alcohol. They might go to the movies, but they're definitely in their cars. And again, there's no chaperone, so it's pretty different than the Victorian era. Okay, so one thing that we do too is we go and read all these really, really bad jokes, and every college had a book of jokes that they would publish. And so here's just a couple of them. And I have you read these normally, but I'll read them to you. So marriage is an institution, marriage is love, love is blind, therefore marriage is an institution for the blind. Okay, we call her Marigold because that's what she's trying to do. So again, these are all from different schools. Dick's been jilted by a street cleaner's daughter, why doesn't he sue her? She may be an artist, but she seldom draws a line. She doesn't drink, she doesn't pet, she hasn't been to college yet. So there is a lot of, you know, kind of comments about girls, you know, making out with guys and stuff. And anyways, okay, and then some of the 20s slang: bee's knees, big cheese, cake eater, dumb Dora, giggle water, chic, spifflicated. And normally what I would do is have you draw a cartoon, your own cartoon, where you use 3 different words in the quotes, but we're not going to be able to do that because what I need you to do is this instead. So using the first 3 documents in the readings about flappers. So there's one by Dorothy Parker, very famous one. There's another one about quotes about flappers, and you'll see Zelda Fitzgerald in there. And then another one about the movies. So describe a flapper using 1 quote from each of the documents. You'll need to include 3 quotes total with your analysis. So give me the quotes and then tell me, how would you describe a flapper? That's question 2. Okay, so now we'll talk about the automobile, and you can see lots of people have automobiles. Kind of interesting about the automobile is they were built very sturdy. So this car, it looks like it's done for, but it actually is going to back up and drive away. Here's another car where somebody's decided they want a longer car, so they just took 2 cars and welded them together, believe it or not. Yes, they did. Okay, so now moving on to prohibition, and usually what I do is I would divide you up and I'd say, well, what are the pros of prohibition, what are the cons? And again, since I'm here by myself, I'll say, so prohibition means, you know, stopping alcohol, right? So the pros would be, well, a lot of women were involved in trying to stop alcohol because women at this time were not in charge of their salary. They could not have control over their children. So a man could drink his salary, her salary, and then take the kids. So the Women's Christian Temperance Union was a big organization. We've talked about that really briefly. It was the first time they really organized in a big way. And you guys remember Margaret Freeland, right? The one that beat up or destroyed the alcohol guy's place. But that would be a pro. So con, of course, is that we do get organized crime, that a lot of people are breaking the law without even worrying about it. We're going to get illegal alcohol, so there's going to be a lot of danger. Okay, you are going to do an activity with this in just a minute, so let me show you some important pictures. So here are some federal agents that are going through and found a warehouse, and hopefully maybe they'll be destroying this alcohol. Here's some other federal agents throwing all this alcohol into the Lake Michigan. This is a speakeasy, and what you would do, and they were all over LA and Chicago and New York, and they were kind of hidden, and you'd speak easy. In other words, you'd give a password, and then you can go into an area where they had gambling and alcohol and all kinds of stuff. So this is some, you know, kind of guys and hillbillies, I guess you'd want to say, that are making moonshine, and the problem there is some of it could be, you know, harmful. I also show a video usually where there's a sport that was associated with all this, and it was NASCAR. So what happened is these moonshine guys were trying to get away from the police, and they also wanted to load down their cars with alcohol, so they made their cars faster and faster and faster, and then they started racing each other, and that's how we got NASCAR. And usually I'd ask you a question about that. Okay, so these are some options on how you could get alcohol. So you can do a brick of wine, you can go to the doctor and get help. You could buy this mix and serve or near beer. Another way is a lot of people started going back to church because then you could get communion. Okay, take a look at this lady because this is going to relate to your assignment. So believe it or not, she's breaking the law right now. And how was she doing that? Well, usually I'd ask, and you're not here, so I have to tell you. She has alcohol in her cane. Here's another woman that looks like she's just this nice woman, right? But she's actually breaking the law also. And here she's got alcohol around her legs. And then these guys have a bunch of alcohol stored in their car. So your third question is describe a clever place to hide alcohol. And don't obviously use the ones I did, come up with your own, and it could be modern or it could be, you know, from the 20s, and then also create an ad against alcohol. So it could just be a couple of lines, but I need you to do both for question 3. Okay, lastly, you guys are going to be looking at the mobs during this time. So you have a primary source on Al Capone, and remember that's the Valentine's Day Massacre, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But because of Prohibition, these guys go from being just kind of petty criminals to huge millionaires. And then we have Lucky Luciano. He was one of the criminals. Meyer Lansky. And let's take a look too. We're going to be looking at the different criminals and kind of creating a profile, and that's going to be one of your questions. Bugsy Siegel. He covers kind of the 20s and the 30s. Okay, so what I want you to do is take a look at this chart. Now let me go to the question, and then you'll be able to look at the chart more purposefully. So I'm going to ask you to tell me 5 generalizations about the 20s criminals from the previous chart. So take a look at it. I'm not going to stay here long because you can stop the video. And make 5 different generalizations you can about the 1920s criminals, okay? And then we will be comparing that with the 1930s, obviously, next week. Okay, so that actually is it. So according to F. Scott Fitzgerald, again, the 20s was the jazz age, a period of fast-paced creativity, cultural improvisation, breakaways from convention, and unabashed sexuality. We are done, you guys. Good job.